stakes are high, questions that sort of pierce the sky. Democracy's fire never runs dry, and oh, say oh, we ask the why. The echoes of history paint these walls, where whispers of change answer the calls. All day a row, what beats bold and strong. We challenge the wrongs to make it belong. They say it's a game, but we see the cost. Every decision, a line that's crossed. From the mountains high to the ocean blue, the people watch the power accrue. Scrutiny, read the stakes are high, questions that sort of pierce the sky. Democracy's fire never runs dry, and oh, say oh, we ask the why. The echoes of history paint these walls, where whispers of change answer the calls. Oh, say oh, we ask the why. The echoes of history paint these walls, where whispers of change answer the calls. The oh, we ask the why. We ask the why.
And good evening and welcome to tonight's Order Paper podcast, where we'll cover the last little bit of Scrutiny Week. Now, if you might have noticed on Friday, there has been speculation that Shane Jones didn't turn up to Scrutiny Week. If you followed some of Kiwi Pulse's live streams, it did mention that missing in action. However, we have found Shane Jones's missing in action footage, and he's actually at the select committee meeting. So, let's kick it off and let's see how Shane Jones performs in front of the Primary Productions Select Committee. Sorry, it takes a little bit of a while to get everything all in order.
As you well know, we've got the Minister for Oceans and Fisheries coming in. Is everyone happy here, given that the meeting has started, to have Suze Redmayne officiate as chair of the committee?
Yes.
Yep. Brilliant. Thanks, team. Thank you very much for your collegiality. I will leave it in your capable hands. Suze, carry on.
Kapai, right. Welcome, everyone. Are we talking first, Carol? Shall we just bring the Minister in?
We can go straight in. And also, sorry, I can't hear me.
How long have we got him here for? 45 minutes.
Yeah, so over the page, I've highlighted the hearing times there, 9 to 9:45 for Minister Jones. Then we do have 15 minutes for consideration, and then we've got Minister Patterson at 10. Also, just for everyone's awareness, the Australian High Commission has let us know that Australia's Parliamentary Standing Committee on Primary Industries will be attending the public hearing. So there's a list of 4 names there, members of that committee who are going to be tagging along as well. Cool. All right.
Plus the Deputy High Commissioner and Policy Officer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Six.
Carla, can you just let us know when we're live, please?
I think we are now. It's light now, Mark.
Thanks, Mike.
Should I name them?
Yeah, that's a whole heap of chit-chat going on.
You'll be fine, Suze.
Good
Good morning, Martin.
Hi, am I Ray?
It's nice to meet you, Ray.
Fabulous team. Are you re-rate yourselves?
We have. Good morning, Minister. We have you here in your capacity as Minister for Oceans and Fisheries for 45 minutes. Thank you very much. Hey, look, I'd also like to take this time when you're all seated to welcome Australia's Parliamentary Standing Committee. So we have Ms. Neril Swanson, Mr. Jamie Chapley, Ms. Trish Cook, Mr. Joel Bateman, and also the Australian Deputy High Commissioner Ben Milton and Policy Officer Liam Taylor. So welcome here. If you'd like to just do some introductory remarks, and then I'm sure that we can get
Okay, yep, sure. To the members who aren't hooked in physically, greetings to the members of the committee. Scrutiny Week wasn't around when Winston and I were here before we were unceremoniously dumped, but wait, we're back. So I want to ensure that the team and I, Mr. Bolger, the CEO, not only answer your questions, but address some issues that have bubbled to the surface recently in the media. So if I can just start with what we have done to date. We created some certainty for the aquaculture sector. I think it's important the committee bear that in mind. I know there was a bit of controversy as to whether or not such permits should have been extended, but I can assure you, given that we're all after economic growth, the people that comprise the investors of that sector have confirmed to us that they're growing. We will be proceeding with our fisheries reforms through the House. Obviously, there'll be a significant opportunity for all of the parliamentarians around the House to test whether or not those reforms are consistent with what the New Zealand public wants from its fishery resource. I have also been away on a few international forays. As you know, we spend a small fortune through the fisheries foreign affairs budget. A lot of that goes to Honiara, where we maintain the costs associated with the Fishing Foreign Agency having its base for the pelagic fisheries, and should never overlook the fact the Kiwis for a long period of time have underwritten that operation. So although it's foreign affairs, I'm the representative of the New Zealand government when I go to those things. And then there's the vexed issue of recreational fisheries. The recreational fishery recent demonstration, outboards and vehicles going over the harbour bridge, it seemed to me that they've finally woken up to the fact that the government and all the parties of the House committed to what are known as HPAs. And these are an innovation covering about 12% or thereabouts of the Hauraki Gulf. It took 15 years to put that kaupapa together. I was never a historic supporter of it, but we all voted for that legislation. A small concession was entered into with the mullet fishermen around Koa Island and one other island, but a tiny fraction for 3 to 6 months per year. But I don't want to shy away from the fact for a number of the people that have been blighting your social media feeds don't understand it, and they perhaps catastrophized it. Then there is the vexed issue of the maho. So there was a politician, and I will finish here, Madam Chair. There was a politician called Colin Moyle back in the days of the Longi government. He arrived at a concession when they created the QMA that the sports fishery, the broadbill fishery, would be kept out of commercial fisheries administration. Fast forward, that compact was changed, and swordfish became part of the QMA, and the leaders of the Marlin Fishery Sports Club hate it, and they have alleged that what I've been doing is circuitously trying to bring that majestic marlin fishery into the QMS. That is wrong. There's no paper evidence that I'm doing that. All I've done is initiate some consultation should the 300 or 400 marlin that are caught through the commercial guys incidentally be left in the ocean or brought back to land. That's all I'm doing. So it's a issue of inverse relationships, a relatively small amount of fish creating a massive overreaction. So the officials are working through with me so we get both sides of the argument and arrive at a conclusion that doesn't distract us from the deeper question, what to do with the broader multi-billion-dollar fishery resource. So if you don't mind, I'll just leave it there with those initial remarks and then hand it back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Okay, so let's kick off with the first bit there. Just to let you know, we have sped up the footage. Shane Jones has talked quite slow, but we will sit there and start learning some ins and outs on fisheries, and hopefully by the end of it we'll be experts on what snapper quota length limits are like and all else. With Matua Shane Jones now getting his first round of questions from the Select Committee.
We have a question from Mark Cameron.
Minister Jones, it's always a pleasure to see you, sir, and I apologise for my absence. I am online, as you can well see. You talked using the word catastrophisation, and I hone in on that. I think there's been a certain degree of that. But if I could prosecute the concerns with the marlin that you've raised, as you have rightly raised, that you are in consultation of the 300 or 400 marlin that are caught as bycatch, and do they get returned to the sea or brought back to land? Is there an economic benefit if there were to be a market for them to have them brought back to land? And I suppose that's the driving initiative behind bringing them back anyway, or have them landed. If that was the case, would you say here today that the current advice is in development, and you haven't made any informed decisions either way in that argument, correct?
Yep, obviously I can't spill all the paperwork, but I can assure you on the record that Mr. Bolger and his team are canvassing both sides of the argument, and our office and our officials have not made a call. There is a wee bit of marlin that is imported to New Zealand, and I've had this proven to me by the officials. It comes out of Fiji, so it's not as if marlin is not being consumed, admittedly in a modest way. But the fear, sir, the fear is that if we enable the longliners, and they're not large in number, to bring this incidental marlin catch back to land, it will feed an appetite where they will go and deliberately at night time use large lights to target that fish species. I have no evidence that they would do that, but at this stage, they are not allowed to bring it back. And until such time regulations are changed, they cannot bring and land that fish. That is the actual situation as we sit here in front of you today.
Thank you, sir, for your clarity.
I've got to stop on this one because the other concern that the recreational fishers have raised, which I've asked MPI as well, so you've probably seen that transcript, is that even though you've said the intention is not to have it end up in the QMS, the concern is that ultimately that will happen perhaps in the future, that it's like a slippery slope essentially. Once you allow a small amount of commercial opportunity through the species, that eventually there'll be an argument put forward for it to just be part of the QMS. So I guess my question is, can you assure the public, can you assure the committee that it is not your intent for it to ultimately end up in the QMS and that you'll, stick to that?
Okay, I think my facts are right, Madam Chair. Between 2002 and 2004, I'm not entirely sure if it was Jim Anderton, but it was the Helen Clark government, swordfish developed catch history. And I don't want to put anyone to sleep, but this is how the system works. Swordfish developed a catch history, and that catch history was used as a basis for the creation and the allocation of quota, thus commercialising access rights to the sword fishery. And the allegation is that somehow I've bumbled along and created an opportunity for that to happen again. I have never had advice from Mr. Bolger or the CEO to head in the direction of commercialising marlin. And until such time we get that advice, I'm not going to gainsay the advice, but I want everyone to know, as I've said, we're deeply, I want the sports fishery of New Zealand to grow. I think it's a great opportunity for further tourism, but I also want people to know that morally it just doesn't sit right with me that we leave all this kai back in the ocean. But having said that, I realise that the people who have invested in the marlin fishery are very suspicious because of what they believe happened in the Helen Clark government to certain commitments that Colin Moyle from the Longy government had made to their group. And I'm deeply conscious of that, but I don't want to sort of blurt something out until we've had the formal advice. When will we make a decision? I don't want to be rushed into doing something 10 days out of Christmas, and it's probably a good idea to be professional and maybe early in the new year make an announcement.
I've got a few more stats on this. So I guess thank you for the engagement. Always good to have a good dialogue around this. I guess I didn't hear though a categorical ruling out of ever including it in the QMS, and I think that is what that community do want to hear, is that categorical ruling out that you wouldn't ever consider putting it into the QMS.
Okay, so Raceman, ordinarily, when the system gives the ministers advice, what process do we take? Because I'd rather get your advice first.
Yeah, well, we would probably want to consult on that idea, I imagine, in a formal way. So we'd put the options to you, what the ups and downs of them were, seek to consult, come back with a view from the public.
Yeah, so there's been a bit of engagement, and I know Legacy and this other group of sort of Cinderellas out of the Instagram community seem to have gone quite nuts. They've put a whole lot of AI submissions in. They've got to go through, sieve them out. But in my view, I see that of all the fisheries reforms that I'm hoping to achieve on behalf of our cabinet government, further alienating and creating a molehill that people might seek to slay me upon is not a priority today.
Yeah. I've got two more very quick stats on this. And then I'll note that for future that I do have lots more primaries. But when I asked MPI earlier in the week, they mentioned it was around 600 per year, but you said 300 to 400. So I'm just wondering.
Sorry, I think I said around 600 since January 24. So that's almost 2 years.
Okay. All right, thanks for the clarity. The other question I asked MPI, but I think I probably know where you'll go with this, was whether it would be included in the legislation next year on fisheries reform, whether you'd be looking to include it in that reform, or would it be a separate piece of?
Yeah, so I can see this as, just give me a little bit of an opportunity, Madam Chair. So this marlin fishery, I really think this is a unique feature of New Zealand's broader fishery, partly because of the history that I just relayed. And as you know, I am looking for ways to expand how the industry itself can deliver more services within guardrails that Cabinet signs off on. I've already talked to you about this, but that's still wending its way through the process. And amongst other things, when we finish the consultation process, which I think is pretty much drawn to an end, I want to explore with the officials, how can this recreational fishery be better managed with greater input from the sports clubs themselves? But I say to the sports clubs, be very careful what you ask for. Because once you have a greater level of responsibility, which is what they tell me they want, as they said that I'm koritake, I haven't been a good steward of the marlin fishery. So if they want to be more and more involved, like the Acclimatisation Society for duck shooting, then be very careful what you ask for.
Okay.
Okay, so interested in that mention about marlin fishing. I have sat down there now. It has so I've done a Google search on here. You can commercially fish for marlin in Australia, but New Zealand it is prohibited. And it's also prohibited to sell, even if it's dead, to the domestic market, from what I'm gathering on there. And all it can be done is for recreational value, which I think sounds very similar to trout, but I can't remember the whole ins and outs of trout. But there is a big push out here. So this is something I've found on. This is something I have found, and it's about the marlin fish. So let's see how it flies.
Giving fish away, do you think that could potentially be an option, or do you think we just don't have the systems in place and we just should maintain it as a non-commercial fishery and just let waste go to the wayside? What's your, because that comes up quite a lot. There's certain programs or distribution centres and the Kaika project, like it could go through there, but do you think that's
so? Do you take away the economic incentive
Yeah.
to land more marlin? I suspect that the industry wouldn't bother icing fish and keeping them and dealing with them without some financial incentive.
It's a big fish to store in your...
And you would think that that the only reason they would do that is because eventually they would be able to take that loophole and then expand it out to a commercial.
Just opening the door, but a little bit slower.
And I mean, and at 2013, when we were talking about they were talking about wastage of striped marlin. They were finning thousands and thousands of sharks and throwing the bodies away. I mean,
utter nonsense.
The argument that the few marlin they were catching dead was terrible waste was a little bit insincere, I thought, at the time.
Now, just to also let you know, that date has passed, but it was quite a useful, quick snapshot of marlin and the recreational bit, and put some practical context into things. If you want to, feel free to add comments of what you think about it. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, we have a poll going. Are you looking forward to seeing our MPs back in the House this week? Oh, heck, I had a bit of a spelling error, but hey, I think you get the message of what it's meant to be. And if you've got any comments you'd like to sit there and mention in there, feel free to sit there and post them in the chat. Just to let you know, Kiwi Skirt also has the night off. So for those who we can sit down there and get back to Matua Shane Jones and hear more from the Primary Production Select Committee.
On that, but I do have another primary. Okay, Tianu, thank you.
Kia ora, e te batu te whanga, joining you remotely as well. I was wondering, and you did talk about it a bit earlier about your intentions with the amendment, your amendment proposals for next year as well. And I wanted to get your perspective on the legalisation and dumping and discarding of fish at sea, and where the flow of the amendments coming through the House, which you said won't be in the next 2 weeks, thankfully, but probably next year. Where are you sitting with that at this particular point in time?
Okay. So as you know, MPI have initiated some consultation over whether or not we should continue to dump at sea the marlin and the reef fishery, including the red boar or some appropriately named fish, given that I look at some of my opponents. Yeah. At the moment, all of that fishery, Tiano, you're not allowed to land or bring back if you're on the East Coast. But if you're on the West Coast, you can. So the reason that we've been consulting for a broader range of species is to try and get some uniformity between the Taitamatane and the Taitamawahi, and Taitamatane being the male element on the West Coast and the more placid approach being the East Coast. But given that the protest happened on the East Coast over the Harbour Bridge, I might have to change my Maori language in that regard. So now the work that we're wanting to do through our big fisheries reforms, which Mr. Bolger is shepherding through bureaucratically, is if we have the cameras and if we have surveillance and we're able to record the behaviour of the captains and the crew on these vessels, rather than bring it back and suffer more bureaucratic red tape, they can dispose of it at sea, because if they're breaking the law, the cameras will have recorded. And we've got the senior, dressed like a military man, Steve, from our Department of Enforcement. They will be able to charge and prosecute people if they've broken the law. I told you this before, my personal view with the cameras, if they don't have a case to bring it back, they can leave it at sea. But if they break the law, the cameras will show they have to be prosecuted.
Thank you. Mark, do you have
Okay, just stuff on that one. I wonder, and maybe your officials can help you, about whether you're looking at changes around Section 82B, which is around avoiding, remedying or mitigating any adverse effects of the fishing on the aquatic environment. If you've got any thoughts around that, that would be good.
Like any successful politician, I will pass the parcel to the appropriate official. Is there anyone remotely across? Section 88 was what we used to successfully prosecute the Maori claims. That's all I remember about 88. So why don't I follow up, Madam Chair, with a written response to what's a reasonable question, but it's a level of granularity. It probably deserves a written response, which thankfully won't come from me.
Thank you. Probably that. I mean, the crux of it is around statutory obligations to ensure sustainability. So I'm just sort of wondering how that will be embedded in the legislation. If not, if you could give us some thoughts on that, that would be good.
Yeah. So the purpose of the Act, there are twin approaches. There's utilisation and there's sustainability. We are not changing the purpose of the Fisheries Act and diminishing the importance of sustainability. What we think we're doing is improving productivity, enabling a whole bunch of issues that have floated around right back to the days of Phil Heatley, right back to the days of Mr. Luxon, right back to the days of Doug Kidd. And we've now got an opportunity to strip out of the system these obstacles of productivity. But we are not undermining or destroying the purpose, the kaupapa of the statute. And there's not much more I can say other than that.
And just one last up, it's just around that consultation piece. And I did hear earlier some remarks about consultation. We are heading into the holiday period. And so public consultations on these issues is difficult. So I was wondering their thoughts to that.
Yeah, so as I understand, we've been running for a few weeks now, the consultation. And if there were to be, what I've asked the CEO to do is that once we arrive at a set of outcomes for this wretched marlin thing, then I want the CEO at the top of the tree with Mr. Bolger to then engage with these characters from the sports fishing clubs, so that our government isn't accused of not having engaged with the peak body. Now, that peak body, as you know, wants to ensure that marlin is not commercialised, not brought back to shore, and remains within their exclusive domain. And then we'll know exactly where the common ground is. So I'm not imagining that we're going to impose consultation obligations while people are all gossiping around the barbecue.
Okay, we've just got to say.
Okay, so let's sit there and bring that up on there about was it dumping fish at sea? So currently, under the Fisheries Act, it is largely illegal. Largely illegal for quota species under the Fisheries Act, but historically been common for unflexibility. But effectively, basically, the dumping of quoted species is illegal. There is also known as bycatch, so that is when you say, you're aiming to catch snapper and you ended up with, say, marlin caught up in there, or, a different type of fish. I know, was it snapper is the big thing from the Hauraki Gulf. I remember that was quite a big issue back in the day. And yeah, there have been proposals to sit down there and put cameras on boats. Just trying to think, have there been any videos that can explain about the dumping of fish? Oh, there's one on there's a piece about 140,000 kgs of wasted fish. All sorts of interesting things you seem to find out online. But yes, let's see more from Matua Shane Jones.
From Mark Cameron.
Yeah, Minister, if we could just circle back to the cameras, because if you mentioned the cameras, sir, and I'm grateful that you brought it into the conversation. You've had mixed views in the past, and you've shared your opinions on their inception and where they are now as part of an industry good. What is your thoughts on the data sharing and capture, and do you think that is being how do I say this, utilised in the best fashion for the industry going forward?
Well, I came off second best in that debate. The Prime Minister reminded me that I'm a member of the Cabinet. Cabinet made a call, and my own leader told me, given I know constitutional law, I should be at all times practice it. So that is now the position of the government. Ray Smith also reminded me that it's the state who does the prosecutions, not the minister. But the state, in reviewing that material, has also got a vested interest in educating people, not just smashing them over. The fishing industry itself did not agree with me, Mark. And sadly, a company that I used to be the chair of turned against my sort of philosophical priorities. So after that, I was pretty much right. So Steve behind me, I'm very conscious. I won't say too much publicly about prosecution decisions, but I have been assured that the material is highly protected, but it's as much for an educational purpose, and only in egregious cases will prosecutions flow. But that's up to the CEO and the kind of the uniform branch of the NPI.
Thank you,
Very
Mr.
good, Minister. Very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Primary
we've got a primary, and
Rachel
actually that's a fantastic segue, because I just wanted to talk to you about that fantastic Nelson company that you used to be a chair of. Obviously, it's devastating that Sealord have had job losses, and I'm interested in your comments around that. And also, if you'd be interested in, I guess, commenting on Doug Pullen's comments about the role the supermarkets have played in terms of their margins. Because one of the things he said publicly is that for their coated products, it's been difficult selling them into the market in New Zealand because of the behaviour of our supermarket duopoly. And I remember when you were a minister in a previous, or maybe an opposition member in a previous party, an excellent political party, we had a bit of a campaign about the supermarket behaviour with towards suppliers. So I guess I'm sure you share my concern around Sealord losing jobs.
Yeah.
It's not what either of us would want to see, and I'm just keen on if you've got any commentary on how we can support this industry, all of us, I think, regardless of political party, to be sustainable, to be able to grow, because that has hurt a lot of jobs, and I know Sealord are not happy with it either.
Well, thank you for that question. But I would say that it's not just the fisheries. I'm sure the CEO receives this kind of feedback from the veggie growers and others in the primary sector. In our coalition agreement, there was a reference between National and New Zealand First about supermarket reform. That take has been taken up by the Minister of Finance. You'd be aware that there's the fast track thing going through, then there's going to be a general policy statement that could be utilised to get better competitiveness in the supermarkets. Look, can I say three things? Number one, what does New Zealand society want in terms of the priority of Kiwis being the major beneficiaries of our fisheries system?
Yeah.
And where's the balance between drawing on foreign labour and not displacing Kiwis either onshore or on sea? And rather than that being seen just as a parliamentary issue, what do Kiwis want? I mean, do you want a system where our primary sector, whether it's the people coming from New Delhi to blight the kiwi fruit sector with all sorts of lurid allegations about human slavery? I mean, I hear these all the time. I mean, what do we want as New Zealanders? And where I sit is both as an MP and a minister and as a Māori, said I want these primary sector industries to meet the needs of garden variety kiwis so we can keep them believing that there's a future in our country. And when that closure took place, I'm sure there was some deep accounting behind it, but it's as much a deep New Zealand issue and in the way that Aussies tend to focus on some of the industries, and they say, to hell with it, we're going to have this industry, whether it costs us or not.
Yeah.
And I'd say to us as politicians, you know, where do we sit on that spectrum, whether it's the lamb industry, the forest industry, and I'll try as much as I can to boost those jobs here in New Zealand. But if we're not going to process fish in New Zealand, then we're going to process more at sea, and then it's going to go where it goes, China or whatever. So that's a New Zealand society question. And when we bring these issues forward for debate, just be absolutely sure that we're balanced in all of our debates. And I think there's been some lack of balance in these areas. And nowhere do I see it more in the kiwi fruit sector, and I have to say progressively in the fishery sector. But then I'm told that, Rachel, I'm told that a lot of the companies need the foreign labour to remain solvent. That's not the view of Sir Peter Talley. So, you know, it's hard to think of a more rural family, more successful than the Talley clan in the primary sector. So I don't want to give a definitive answer, but I want to put it where it belongs. It's very much a societal issue. And I know the men to both sides of me, they agree. It's where we're going as a country.
And look, I agree with you on a lot of that, I think. And I think just as a Nelson MP, obviously, this has been concerning, you know, for us in terms of Sea Lord. And so I guess that is part of my question is in the fisheries part in particular, which is where you do have responsibility. Are there more levers we can pull? Is there more government can do to help drive ensuring that those jobs are keeping used?
Well, without delving too deeply into the Sea Lord question, I'm sure it costs them a small fortune to run their factories on the port.
Yep.
And I wonder whether or not they have been back and spoken to the port. Look, the level of burden that you've got upon this, which is essentially a commodity industry as such, unless you kind of revisit some of this cost structure, it's difficult for us to run these commodity businesses on your port. Because I don't hear similar complaints from Sir Peter Talley's enterprise in Motueka.
Yes.
So I don't think it's just a matter of labour and fisheries. I think it's a matter of the costs of running these businesses in certain locations. And for fear of someone writing me a letter to subsidise it, I won't say any more.
Yes, I know who might do that, yeah.
Gianna, do you have a sup on this question?
No, mine was primary. So no, sorry.
Welcome, Blake.
Here I am to say the day again.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to Laura, but we haven't really talked much about it. This week has just been a full-on week for me with the combinations of the coffee cart. I mean, put it this way, coffee cart, scrutiny week, I'm doing that. I mean, put it this way, I saw Gail today and served her was it quarter strength flat white and a long black for Mr. White.
Yeah. Was Craig there today?
At the Ford and Fair?
At the yeah.
If he was, I didn't see him. He didn't come and buy
Okay.
coffee. And I will tell you right now, with the limited view I had, I wouldn't even be able to tell you how congested the motorway was. And I was sitting on top of it.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it was, I pretty much basically from about 8:30 this morning to about 2:30 this afternoon, my biggest gap of break of no customers was 15 minutes.
The picture looked good, and hello to everyone.
Oh yes, yes. And it took half an hour from when the pictures were taken to it got posted on Facebook because it had many customers there. So back to the important part on there.
Yes, you found the Shane Jones footage.
Yes. Well, I do remember Kiwi Pulse saying didn't turn up, but yeah, I went on there and I found it.
Yeah, they were asking me if I'd seen it, and they couldn't find it either. So glad you found it.
Yeah, I wonder if this is. You remember we had issued last time we had scrutiny with her Brook Van Velden? I wonder if it's the same thing.
They're just lazy uploading the footage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was a bit of a delay in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, should be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So should we hear more from
We shall.
Shane Jones?
We shall.
I've got more primaries, but I'm happy to share the love.
Yeah, Tiana, would you like to ask for a primary now? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Kia ora. Kia ora, Minister. My question is about one of your favourite topics, climate change. I know you love it. Previously, just in the House, we did have a back and forth around our marine environment report, and it's been a bit of time since that engagement, and I wonder if you've had any further reflection on that report, in particular around the impacts that what the report says could have on the fishery industry, because I know you're big on that, and so I was wondering if you've done any policy work or asked your officials to do any kind of policy work around what they could look like, particularly with the amendments, the fisheries amendments that you're proposing for next year.
Okay, I didn't anticipate this question.
Well done.
And in the audience, Tiano is my wife, and her advice to me as I came into this session was, Shane, don't make it all about yourself. So, no, it's a genuine question. And Madam Chair, I want to call on our expert at the policy level to just address what he's saying. Has the fisheries disconnected from climate change? Is that cool with you?
It's cool with me.
Over to you, buddy.
Thanks, Mr.
Now come closer so everyone can hear.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we do look at the evidence and information about what the impacts of climate change can be on warming seas and how that might affect fisheries, the distribution of fisheries. We see some fisheries moving further south into cooler waters. So that is something we do think about. And what I'd probably say, just as a what's right in front of us is, and what you'll be seeing when the bill comes to you next year, is one of the responses to this is to think about, well, what are our regulatory systems? How do we make those a bit more agile, a bit more flexible to account for the changes that we might see, and that those changes could be faster and more rapid than we used to. So we do want a system that allows us to be more responsive to those changes when they occur. And so there will be, the changes that the Minister has announced. Part of that is about using the range of new data that we're getting from things like electronic reporting and cameras, which will allow us to be a lot more responsive to changes in the fisheries when they occur. So that may not be the full answer. We're still monitoring and seeing how things play out, and there'll probably be further changes. But this first bill, I think, is a way of actually starting to shape the system to help address those impacts as they play out.
I mean, just a tiny example, Tiano, is in the South Island, I'm told that types of fish that we associated with the North Island have now drifted south. I just need certain people in Taitokere to follow the fish in the South Island. So what I've asked the officials to look at, and I don't want to get too technical, and it's possibly the first time I've said it publicly, but how do we cope when big fishing boats are catching fish that was never there historically, and because of the catching technology they use, they're catching more of it. They can't avoid catching it. And presumably it's moving because of changing water temperatures. So how do we change the system to recognize that when they catch that fish, they have to pay what I call a tax, which is a deemed value, because they don't have the quota for that fish? Then if they're catching more of it, how do we respond to that? Because they can't change the way they're catching fish. They're not targeting that fish, but they bring it back in a form. Whilst it's not worthless, it is not designed, it is incapable of capturing a high price because of the way they caught it. They didn't know it was there until the last 3 or 4 years. So Ray and Mr. Smith and his team are looking at options. Can there be flexibility without grossly penalising men and women who are catching that fish, and they have no intention of catching it, but they cannot avoid it because of changing temperatures? So reasonable. So that's one small example. Whether or not that finds favour in society through the process, I'll endeavour to bring it to the attention of the Select Committee some point next year. But we've got to have practical solutions, because the fish is heading to Te Waiponunu,
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so before we move on to the next
just kind of one quick start on top of it, which is because you talked about the fishing boats as well. One of the things that I noted in that report also was the impact on coastal communities. So fishing boats have got to leave from somewhere. What thinking will be made in terms of those particular communities? It's going to get, I imagine, more difficult as temperature rises with the oceans, and of course everything else as well. So is that factoring in any of the minister's thinking or officials? Well,
let's face it, recently a couple of people in that coastal community constituency that we're talking about, they had to step back while we made some changes to try and improve the survival prospects of the hoiho penguin. And I can't talk too much about that because these inveterate sort of addicted litigators funded by someone shadowy down there in the South Island, they got me in court, so that's all I'll say about that. So the reality, though, is we want more little boats to be viable. But if we're going to continue to do what we've historically done, and we are a centre-right government, to kind of let the owners of the assets deploy them in a way that makes rational sense, in order to give more opportunity for that constituency you're talking about, you're probably talking about introducing some more regulations at some point to direct how quota owners make their quota available, targeted at certain owners of boats. And I can assure you, Madam Chair, I have no mandate from the Cabinet to stray off in that direction, although every time I go into the regions, I'm implored to do just that.
Okay, Mark, do you have a sup on?
So, just dissect here, and those in the chat, please also dissect this as well. If you do not have an allocated quota for the fish, does, say, you know, when you catch stray fish that aren't part of the quota, does that mean that it doesn't have any value because you cannot sell it because you do not have the license or the quota for it? Is that from what you gathered from what Matua Shane Jones have just said?
I just looked. That's why I popped back out, because I just looked it up. And apparently that's what it is.
So effectively, if you sit there and say you're meant to sit there and catch, you know, let's say a ton of snapper, and you end up catching a ton of kahawai at the same time, you can't actually sell the kahawai. You can only sell the snapper if you got the snapper quota.
Apparently so, according to the internet, but who knows?
Gee, we're learning a lot of things on tonight about what's going on there. And for those in the chat, respond and say, do you come across the same thing? You know, it's quite interesting learning about fishery quotas here. I mean, I didn't expect today's show to be learning about fisheries quotas, but, you know, it's just what it is. Yeah. So shall we hear more from Matua Shane Jones?
You fish sell.
This question. You're on mute, but I gather that's a primary. Look, before we move on, I just want to acknowledge Dot. Welcome to the best select committee in Parliament, the Primary Production Select Committee. Sorry, I didn't see you earlier. Right, Rachel, fire away.
I had a supplementary on this, and it's a slight movement away from Tauno's original line of questioning, but I don't think the public understand necessarily enough that this sector actually has lower emissions than a lot of our other primary industries, and we've got huge opportunities as a nation to grow this sector, which would help drive down our emissions and actually improve climate change outcomes while also growing jobs. So is that something that the ministry is looking at in terms of policy? Like, how can we, you know, sorry, other primary industry sectors, but I love this one. Can we really throw everything into this one to actually, you know, get lower emissions as a nation and also use the opportunities that we have from the oceans?
Probably the best opportunity presented here is more people in the world are eating fish from aquaculture growth.
Yeah, I was going to get to aquaculture, so yeah.
Right. So, but in New Zealand, it's not that way around. So we haven't really used our coastal environment, our economic zone, particularly, you know, our landmass we optimise.
Yeah.
At sea, we've kind of operated in a protective way that hasn't allowed for aquaculture growth other than that's already been consented. It's been impossible for companies to get consents. It took Blue Endeavour 11 years and $10 million to get that thing in the Cook Strait, which is pretty ambitious, actually. So the plan to put open ocean aquaculture out through, particularly from sort of Christchurch, but south of Christchurch down through to Stewart Island, where the water's cool, about 20 k's out. It's a very low impact way of creating protein and fishing. So the only thing that for the seafood industry, you know, one emissions issue that they have, which is unique to them, is of course they use a lot of diesel and a lot of fuel. So, and you know, when those prices are high, 50 to 60% of their costs can be chewed up and just getting out there and doing their thing. So one of the challenges for them going forward will be just how over time that can be resolved. That's a worldwide problem. It's not unique to New Zealand.
So, I mean, I know other members of the committee may not agree with me on this, but you know, how can we support a transition away from reliance on dairy through to a reliance on
You want to do both. You want to do both.
Yeah, we want to, of course we want to do both, but
Rachel, are you sure you're on the right party? I mean, that is a very perceptive question.
But seriously, right? We have huge opportunities in this sector.
Okay, let's go right there. I have been encouraged by the officials to promote ideas at a political level to simplify the allocation of consents. They have been waiting. They've done a lot of work well before my return to politics. I don't have a cabinet mandate, but I've said publicly that when we get back into the boxing ring, I believe there should be a bespoke, dedicated piece of aquaculture legislation dealing with the allocation of permits and consents for the growth of aquaculture in New Zealand. You've heard me say this before. It's not government policy. We are supporting the ACT Party as a New Zealand First Minister National to rewrite the RMA. But if you're asking me, Shane, you're pro-industry, and if you ask me with my portai on for New Zealand First, I've long said that the focus of RMA has been so much on land that we need a bespoke legislation. Now, I think it's outrageous that they spent 11, 12, 15 million dollars. You and I as New Zealand politicians should hang our heads in shame that those investors were stranded in that period of time. I mean, I think it's outrageous, and thank you, Jenny Markroft, for sticking up for the oyster farmers in Mahurangi. They've been driven to the level of penury because of land-based developments overseen by the council, and the pieces have to be picked up by Watercare. And I don't want to go on a hate session with Watercare because I do believe now come to the party and trying to find a solution. But all of this cannot be dealt with by a terrestrially based resource management system. I don't want to put Ray on the spot, but they have been challenging themselves and in the aquaculture sector to come up with a more sophisticated way to grow this segment. And if God is my witness, if I have an opportunity in the future, I'm going to do it.
So would you support like a Marine Spatial Planning Act type arrangement?
Yeah, it's things like that. But for example, you may not know in Helen Clark's time in 2002, 2003, 4, there was the imbroglio of the seabed and foreshore. She entered into, when I was chairman of the Fisheries Commission, an aquaculture settlement, and we got it wrong. I've said this in the past. We did not guarantee to the Māori claimants that they would get their resource consents. So we now have a situation where a number of iwi who have spent quite a bit of money trying to get resource consents for space that came to them via this sort of 2002 or something settlement, and still they haven't got any business within that space. I think that's outrageous. And that's just a small example of why spatial planning, which guarantees consents, should happen as soon as possible.
Thank you. Right, Mark, do you have a...
Okay. Great points to mention there, especially about the oyster farm. Was it near? I think it's near Warkworth, where basically the sewage treatment plant has just basically had to put untreated discharge into it that actually affected the industry and basically effectively meant the oysters were rendered not fit for consumption for for a period of time that basically just like damaged one particular business industry because of the the untreated discharge and the problems that flow on with that when you have untreated discharge going into food producing waterways.
Yeah, but like you said, at least someone like Jenny Markroft is standing up for it.
Yeah. And that's something like, Jenny has got this one on the right. I remember when we covered the local issues debate, it's a little while ago now, Laura was the one who suggested it. That's what Jenny Markroft's, mentioned that, this was the issue that was in her area. I mean, Patrick Palmer also managed to mention the same for that. Effectively, there's a sewage traffic jam to the treatment plant because there isn't enough enough capacity of the pipes to actually let sewage go to the treatment plant.
It'll be interesting to, sorry to get off topic, but it'll be interesting to see if, knowing that, the backbenchers, if they rerun again, Markroft and that will come on stuff like it's in the ballot next year. I'll be interested to see.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens, and I'm sure we can organise getting Jenny in there. I do have a contact that works with Jenny. Yeah, it will be intriguing to see what will happen. Let's get more from Matua Shane Jones.
Question?
Yeah, I did have a question, but largely, Minister, you've answered the question. It was about attracting foreign investment into aquaculture and or domestic investment. And obviously you talked about RMA, potential reforms and what we are going to do as a government that would expedite that. Do you see that the aspirations where we sit of growing the aquaculture industry can be realised in the timeframes that we set ourselves, or do you think it is a lot more work to do?
Well, Madam Chair, I'll just defer to the CEO because he's recently been to Japan, and amongst other things, they were talking about inward investment to New Zealand in the broader primary sector.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the dialogue I've had with particularly Japanese who've got a long history of investing here, they are very interested. And when you start talking about growth rates of maybe up to 3 billion to 10 billion over 15 years, people start to take notice. So they would be I think they'd be very keen investors in the aquaculture sector. It's what I found interesting in talking about it internationally is people haven't really looked at New Zealand and thought about it in that way. Because it's been too difficult to get through the consenting processes But look, I mean, I think the government's got a range of programs in place, whether it's around overseas investment, whether it's around cost of capital in terms of the 20% concession in their first capital outlay, along with kind of what's happening in the resource management changes to actually make this all possible.
I just know we're living in a deficit in the world, and I'm looking at opportunities that this government and future governments can find to expedite economic growth. So, thank you for your answer.
Yep, the opportunity is there. The stuff sells itself. Even with the tariffs, I'm told people are still buying our green-lipped mussel. My dad would be rolling in his rua, in his grave, to know that 20 or 30% apparently of the mussels are going to pet food. I'm advised that families up in Asia no longer regard kids as necessary. They wander around with little pets and they need to be fed. And apparently green-lipped mussel is the go.
Now, we've met time, Minister, but I do wonder if you would indulge us just for a couple of minutes, because Joe Luxon has one question about Kaluka. Is that okay?
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate that and appreciate your time and the officials' time again this morning. My question is, are you concerned about Kalupa and the potential impact on our recreational fishers, particularly in the area that you are from? And is your team doing any thinking around what that might mean if it is something that cannot be got rid of, even though it is dying back at the moment?
Yeah, so before I defer to the experts, of course, you and I should be deeply concerned. I hail from Taitokere. The thing is spreading in the Bay of Islands. There's a young bloke there, Andrew Johnson, who's come up with some technology. I'm sure that you know of it. Although it's biosecurity, it comes up on a regular basis to do with fisheries. And irrespective of who the government is, Madam Chair, it's really up to us as parliamentarians to prioritise how much do we want to dedicate towards biosecurity expenditure. Now, Jacinda threw a lot of dough at, what the hell was it, the micro replacement voters. Yeah.
It worked.
But whether or not I would have done it was irrelevant. It was a big call made by her government, and we're going to reach a point. I think the public is going to demand of us as politicians to prioritise pūtea to deal with marine-based threats in the way that we found the money to deal with agriculture-based threats. And I do feel a bit aroha for the team who, whether it's the hornet threatening the honey industry or Kalepa, we probably need to reset our priorities based on what the public expect us to do with their pūtea.
Can I ask a very quick sum on that one? Thank you for that explanation. And I've also raised that question to Mr. Hogarth about the amount that was spent on mycoplasma and why not a similar or more thinking around Kalupa. Are you having those conversations with him as Minister for Biosecurity to push for more funding for Kalupa?
Yeah, so obviously we're running our fiscal strategy, and your colleagues have already had Nicola Willison and talked about our fiscal priorities and the strategy. But as a private sector industry sort of guy, of course I believe we should dedicate more pūtea, but just like in any government, it's in a debate of priorities. And I do think though that the public and boat owners, they need to be a lot more vigilant as well.
Yeah.
Because like, if I just give you an example, recently, slightly tangentially, but it's the same thing, Joe, we dedicated some pūtea to Jackson's Bay, way the hell down near Fiordland. Why? Because it wasn't, Jenny went down there, was sort of decrepit infrastructure. And then the day that they were there, Steve Ham's people found that some recreational characters were breaking the law with bringing some kai moana to shore. So Steve and his team are going to be stretched over summer. So it's up to you and I as parliamentarians to challenge our own community. Don't blame just the bureaucracy and the minister if you feel that sustainability is not being delivered. Take more responsibility for yourselves, or we won't have a country that has that bounty that we grew up with. And the same with these threats to Kalupa. The more we can embrace the public, reward the public, I don't know, come up with some better ways of incentivizing to share the burden, because the state cannot do it by itself.
No.
Well, I don't believe, Ray, that the state can do it by itself. So, so I mean, so Steve Ham, obviously, just, be a bit thoughtful. They've got a hell of a job this summer. And also, although there's a reputation that's sort of developed that I've kind of careered around like a drunken fisherman at the AGM of the commercial fishery sector in Queenstown or something, I've actually closed a lot of things down. I mean, we're very soon to make a decision that's more than likely going to stop the access of recreational and commercial people in New Zealand from taking crayfish for the entirety of the Taitokere East Coast. Those are very, very big decisions to make. But I'm making it at some point in time because the officials have used science and have spoken to the public, and the public has said enough is enough. We have mined this resource to such a point it can't survive if we stay on the current trajectory. So these decisions, they have to find public favour. And it's the same as dealing with biosecurity. We need to bring the public on board as well. And hopefully I'm sounding lucid in that description. Or I've been to a talk about the crowd too bloody late anyway.
Thank you very much, Minister. We've reached extended time, and thank you for indulging us, and thank you for being so passionate about it.
Very good.
Yeah, bring some interesting things there. So I want to ask you, in a week or a month, how frequently do you eat fish?
I can't really have fish that much because it's a choking hazard, but when I do have it, I enjoy it.
And let me guess, that's the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much basically, if you go by that, is the only thing you can probably touch is canned tuna.
No, I can't. Like I can eat. Well, I do sometimes eat fish and chips and something like that. So they take the bones out my places now.
Oh, yeah. I'll be honest with you, they bite in that way. The conventional part of the fish and chip shop, literally filleting and cutting, filleting the fishes, is a little bit of a thing of the past. There is in Wellington, there is Wellington Fish Supplies in Kew Street that supplies multiple places. Like if you want decent quality fish, that's the place you go to, and you can get fresh fish from there. But basically, the concept of the fish and chip shop filleting fishes like they did back in the day when I was a kid, and like back in the day when my parents were a kid, are long past their times now. It is more cost effective for smaller fish and chip places to buy it pre-filleted everything.
It's quite popular in this area. I don't know about where you live. They still do it quite a bit here.
Yeah, and it's probably the one where you're getting it from is a fish and chip shop that probably does that. That's probably more what it is the fact that you've probably got a fish and chip shop that does that, and it's more it's pretty time consuming.
It also depends how popular they are.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And it's like, what is the main product line? Is it just fish and chips, or is it fish and chips and Chinese? Considering quite often that tends to be the most common combination is fish and chips and Chinese, which many of the dishes cross paths. Got to admit, deep fry comes useful for both types of cuisine.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get on to the second part, let's get to our super chat. Come on, let me get to it. From Lord Alex or Super Chats. Shane Jones looks like he was just released from the insane asylum. Wes still on Twitter. He just trolls people who's against the fast track bill.
It depends what you like and what you don't like about that bill. There are some good parts and not so great parts.
Yeah, the environmental parts is a very big issue with the fast track legislation.
But Alex will be interested to know there are some good benefits for disabled people and transport.
Well, if they can fast track trains that you can put your wheelchair on and be safe, I would say that would be a plus.
Yeah.
And you probably know what I'm thinking there. It's probably not likely to happen. Yeah. Okay, let's get on to our next MP, Mark Patterson. So this will take a little bit of a while. This one started off a fair bit later. And I'm jumping so far, I've already jumped a minute forward, so...
It'll be good watching this one again because I fell asleep during it the other day. Not a good sign when Mark Patterson put you to sleep.
That's scary thinking about that.
Right, welcome, Minister Patterson. Great to see you again. Thank you very much for coming to the Fantastic Primary Production Select Committee. We have you for 45 minutes. So if you want to do some introductory remarks, I know we do have a few questions from the team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I will keep my introductions quite brief. I'm aware that you've had a marathon week and, I'd like it to be more back and forward. I know that you're familiar with Ray and Jane and the rest of the team that will have probably been sitting here for hours on end. So from a rural communities perspective, it has been a stellar year in terms of across the board commodity prices at record or near record levels in most cases, interest rates falling significantly, and tourism numbers heading back towards pre-COVID levels. So also note that that's reflected in record levels of confidence within our farming sector, which of course underpins much of our rural communities. From what I can see, initial caution is now leading to investment, and as a general rule of thumb, I think the further south you go, the better it gets in many respects, of course, but in this case, economically. That said, there is a lot of challenges still for our rural communities. At the forefront, and what I've highlighted in the past, the severe pressure that our rural health sector is under. Minister Ducey is to be commended in convening a series of 13 rural health roadshows around the country, for which myself and the rural communities team supported. We now are in possession of a report that will be released publicly on the 15th of December, I believe, which is a really good insight into the current state of play. But in broad terms, the consistent themes are access to workforce, challenges around that, travel allowances, and a clear desire to deliver more services closer to home. And I think that is it's a response to the fact that we had a massive centralisation of Health New Zealand. It was very fragmented and then rolled into one, and then that has led to a disconnect to the front line of rural health servicing. And we're now seeing that unwinding and more regionalisation of it, and that. So we're heading in the right direction, but it's clear that had led to a disconnect from frontline services. Issues around connectivity continue to be a challenge. We've got the shape of the roll-up of copper wire service that we're working through at the moment. There's the 3G getting turned off coming up, so that's we're keeping a very close eye on that, and certainly, and as highlighted recently, the resilience of our communications networks during emergency management events. One of the key focuses that we've highlighted before to this committee, and I just commend Jane and her team for the work, is because it's sort of unheralded stuff, but the work they're doing around statistics, because my first question I get in this role is how do we define a rural community, and it seems like every department categorises it differently. So there's work going on, and Jane and her team are leading that to standardise that. And just as an example, I think the current statistics point to about 16% of New Zealand being classified as regional, where we believe it could be as rural. We believe that could be as high as 25%, which makes a material difference within this ecosystem and how resources are distributed. So I see that as under the radar, but really important work that the rural communities team are doing. In terms of forestry, has obviously been another one that's been something that's has been a real flashpoint in rural communities, and I'm pleased that we have landed the restrictions on class 1 to 6 land and driving very much for that right tree, right place. In terms of the positives, I think the upcoming reforms to the Resource Management Act will be hugely welcomed in our rural communities. It has just got far too hard to get things done. And I would also like to highlight investment in irrigation and water storage. That MPI leads some of that work, but it also crosses over into my regional development portfolio with Kānoa. So significant investment in Canterbury, Northland, smaller investments in Wairarapa and Tairāwhiti, but there is much more to do. Huranui, bigger schemes in Tairāwhiti, significant schemes in Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa and Central Otago. And just to finish, the wool thing, which is really good to see, the wool price lifting, which has given farmers a little bit of hope. We're not at levels now where people are jumping for joy, but at least we're reached the very low bar of covering sharing costs and a little bit of a addition to the bottom line rather than a cost. A lot of the innovation that's been funded through MPI over the years, things like acoustic panelling, the pigments, particles and powder stuff, which I consider to be the holy grail because it's the game changer, and there'll be some announcements around that next week. Actually, on Monday, I'm going down to highlight the first commercial shipment going, which hopefully will then lead on to wider investment into that very promising category for wool into bioagents, and that I will point out has the ability to take genuine scale. It's not just a wee niche opportunity, and we're seeing investments starting flow into onshore manufacturing, and hopefully some more to be announced soon. And just finally, the Wool Alliance, which is an amalgamation or an enduring model. What does an enduring model for the wool industry look like? That hasn't had an industry body for one of its only two primary sector industries that doesn't have an industry group representing it since the Wool Board and the levy got voted down. So we're looking at bringing the Wool Alliance together, which is Wool Impact, the Campaign for Wool, RONS, which is the research and development arm, and aligned with Beef and Lamb New Zealand. So that work is now being socialised with farmers in terms of what that's going to look like. So with that, I'll just open up to the committee for questioning.
Thank you very much.
Opening statements.
Yeah.
Sounds like a minister is putting their head down, just getting on with their shit.
Mark Patterson is a very astute person. As you may or may not have remembered, me and Paul had dealt with him a couple of times, and he's always a good head to deal with.
Yeah, no, every time you sit there and do it, it's quite interesting. You definitely show the passion on wool. But I like someone actually has shown passion on it, because I don't think I've ever heard a government minister speak about value added when it comes to wool in my lifetime.
Just that he won't mind me talking about that, because he mentioned that in a few pieces that we've done. But he always credits Jerry Brownlee for being a great teacher for him at school.
Yeah.
Which is pretty ironic. Now they are working together.
Yeah. So, any other comments before we get to see how he's being grilled by the committee?
Yeah, just that Jerry used to be a wood teacher.
What, a woodwork teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty common knowledge.
Yeah.
It is a pretty common knowledge that, Jerry Brownlee was there at a previous point in his life before he became a politician.
Yeah. So interesting. Small world. But anyway, we shall carry on.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. Right, Joe.
Thank you for your time this morning, Minister, and again, thanks to the team who are accompanying you. In the past, when I've asked you questions about your role as Minister, you've mentioned that it's largely one of advocacy. So I kind of want to target my questions to you around that today, and I want to start off, I've got a few primaries, but I'll start off, and a few supplementaries if you'll indulge me, Madam Chair, around school buses, rural school buses. And recently, it's a big issue for our rural communities, right? And recently, families in Marae Kākaho say they're being left with unaffordable transport costs after learning the Ministry of Education will discontinue their school bus route to 3 Hastings secondary schools next year. So my questions around that to you, Minister, have you raised any concerns with the Minister of Education about the impact that these cancellations will have on rural families?
Yes, we met with the Minister, actually with rural women who've been quite vocal on this. So it's something that we are advocating for. But as you'll be aware, I mean, that formula for rural buses hasn't changed since 1991, I think. So actually the same as the government you were in. So it continues to be a bit of a work in progress. But so I have no real updates in terms of changes. But yeah, we're certainly making the Minister aware that some of these communities are impacted.
Supplementary, Madam Chair, do you think it's acceptable that parents in Marae Kākaho will be facing unacceptable costs simply to get their children to school?
Look, there's always going to be impacted community. We've got to look at this at a systematic level. So yeah, I do, absolutely I do. But how do we have a system that's flexible enough to accommodate those examples? And I think, my own view on this, and certainly what we're advocating for, is it's to inflexible at the moment, and there needs to be some ability to innovate within that model. Jane, you might like to pick up on some of this in detail.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're right, Melissa. The way that they do the formula is it hasn't been updated for a number of years, and some of the difficulties. It's almost there's an annual point in the year where they set the school bus routes for the following year. So every year there's population changes because children either move from primary to secondary school or from secondary school out into the big wide world, and that means that sometimes school bus routes fall in and out of eligibility for running because they don't have the students up the driveway anymore. And so annually there is always unfortunately some movements and some shifts. There are some bus routes that get added. There are some bus routes that get subtracted. So it is disappointing to see, but it is unfortunately one of those things that the ministry keeps an eye on every year and then retenders those services. They tender the other services for longer periods of time, but there is always a bit of movement around the margins.
Thank you. Supplementary. As Minister for Rural Communities, do you think that this treats rural communities fairly with the decisions like this around our school buses and our children not being able to access the school of their choice because of the changes that these changes to the bus routes?
Well, it's a consistent formula that's been there for long periods of time. So as I say, I do think there's room for more flexibility. We're not directly in control of dictating that, but that's certainly what we're advocating for.
And final supplementary rolled into one, Madam Chair. Will you advocate for the reinstatement of the Marae Kakaho School bus route for families in that community? And also, what have you done as far as advocating, well, more than advocating for rural communities that are facing unaffordable costs to get their children to school in your role as Minister for Rural Communities?
Well, I don't believe I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe I've been directly lobbied by that school that you referenced. So absolutely, if they want to get in touch with me, but it's a systematic thing. I do think it deserves more flexibility and the ability of other services to be tacked onto it so that it does make it economic. I would point out that the Ministry of Education spends $263 million a year on school buses, so it is a big expense, and that's an absolute necessity. It's not, this is not a cost-saving thing, but it's got to be economic. There's not a bottomless pit of money.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd argue that the ministry spends not on funding kids to get to their closest school, and that I think the review first came up in 2023, but you guys pushed it to the side, so it's just one of those things that goes through.
Madam
But anyway, right, yes, question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good Minister, good to see you as always. Sorry for my.
I think that is cheeky of Sus Redmayne pointing at your party pushed it to the side. I thought that was a very disingenuous comment.
Yeah. What a great.
But 2023, yes, could be pushed to the side because it's an election year. And you don't want to sit down there and have the old administration say, sign yourself up to something that the new administration potentially wants to change.
It's a bit rich because it's like, if they had gone through, let's just say, for example, and this is hypothetical because he wasn't, let's just say Joe was the minister, right?
Yeah.
And she decided to do the review. There's every chance that theoretically Sue could have become the minister herself and turfed it out herself.
Well, and actually, this current government has a track record of that, especially on the futures of local government. Every single recommendation was deemed you got it wrong for across multiple different so basically the reviews on local government that was done by Labour, by the time we got to Simeon Brown, he just went all of it's bad because it was national.
So I don't know what you think, but I think it's very rich of her to say you turfed it out before we could have a look.
Yeah, and it's like that is like that's also a reason why there are like certain provisions in place, like contract extensions for CEOs, often happen in election year, is so that you don't end up having the new administration coming in. One thing that was interesting is Wellington City Council, with the fact that they said that Barbara McKerrow actually went in and said, actually, I don't want to renew my contract, was which was not an ordinary thing.
The other thing that annoyed me about this segment is neither him or Chris Bishop will acknowledge the issues with the buses.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Oh, doesn't certainly surprise me. Actually, I want to ask you, when you're going to Kimiora, was Cross Country Rentals the company that took you between point A and point B?
They were indeed.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that for some reason they seem to have a lot of MOE runs.
Yep.
Yeah. And Cross Country Rentals is owned by the same company that owns Transurban, the buses.
They so they started doing it in about 2018 when the other company when something starting with S went into liquidation.
Oh, okay. Oh, so they basically bought the contracts.
They had to buy 25 vans or something.
Yeah.
And they took it over within a year.
Yeah, yeah. So they bought the contracts. Yeah, which the same thing happened, and not quite the same one, but in Paraparaumu, there was at one stage two different companies that had Ministry of Education runs, and so one of them was Mana Coach, the other one was Paraparaumu Road Services, and Mana Coach ended up buying out Paraparaumu Road Services, so they bought out the contract. And basically let Paraparaumu Road Services owner retire.
So yeah.
So that would have been
because
they would bought the contract.
Yeah, because Porirua taxis also went into liquidation.
Oh, okay. Who's got MOE runs in Wellington? Is that combined?
I think Cross Country got them as well.
Okay, yeah, no, because I know, what's it called? Michelle said for years it was combined, but she wasn't eligible for Elijah to have it because Elijah, the closest school was down the road, but Elijah didn't go to the closest school. Elijah went to Miramar Central.
Yeah, and then Miramar Central.
And because they would only fund it to go to the first one, so she used to walk Elijah all the way to Miramar Central and back.
And then although he had finished by then, Miramar got bought out by Kimiora.
Oh, what do you mean? The contract for Miramar Central got transferred to Kimiora?
No, the whole school got bought out. They bought out the special needs division.
Oh, okay. Probably wise.
And they brought, in case you're interested, they brought Nino College as well.
Oh, that could be useful. I don't know which one is the right college to send special needs kids in.
Paid over 6 figures for both buildings.
Oh, okay. So is Kimiora, was it a private school or like a charter school?
No, they didn't. They're a specialist school.
Specialist school. Okay, yeah.
But what they did is originally they had the school in Nino, and then they rolled through, so they started buying out other units and stuff.
Yeah.
So they bought Omari, and then Nino College, and then another one. So yeah.
Okay, so while we get off the topic of school bus routes and special needs schools, let's get back to the select committee.
Yeah.
And let's hear from Mark Cameron in isolation.
Absence. Sir, do you want to speak to the issues concerning rural contractors? I don't know if you've had any discussion with officials and around rural contractors, the issues in and around some of the equipment issues that they're having with New Zealand Police officiating the law as is the law is written. And are you working with various ministers outside of your wheelhouse to try and alleviate some of the concerns that rural contractors have had in and around rural New Zealand, moving their gear up and down rural New Zealand, doing their job?
Yeah, so I certainly am aware of this position, particularly around the Waikato region. It's certainly we've had meetings and correspondence with those contractors. So that's in terms of, I'd have to go, but this is going back a little bit, Mark. Yeah, the weights and the licensing. So yes, I mean, it's something that has been going on for a long period of time. Hasn't all of a sudden the police have decided to enforce these laws. But in terms of specific advocacy beyond sort of anecdotal discussions with ministers and other MPs, I couldn't actually point to a genuine action on that. I'm being totally honest with you, Mark.
Very good. Thank you, Minister.
We have done them.
Scott, did you have a
Oh,
question?
hang on a second, Mark. I think I'll bring Jane in. Yeah.
Sorry, we did raise these concerns prior, but I don't think it was within the current period of the review.
Yeah.
So I think it was possibly previous.
I appreciate that it's ongoing, but I think to that point, the fact that it is ongoing would fall inside this annual review period. I mean, this problem has not gone away, and I just wondered if we are managing to get a handle on that problem, or is it continuing?
Look, I haven't. The discussions I had were probably going back 12 months ago, so that was kind of I'm a bit vague on the details, but I haven't. We haven't been approached lately on that issue, so I guess my assumption is that there is some discretion being utilised by the police. Okay. But if that's something that you're hearing is still ongoing, then I'm more than happy to take it up.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on to Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Good to see you, Minister. And I'm very keen to explore health a little bit more, because there's been a $7 billion investment into health under this government. And what support, other than a report that's coming out, what support, actual support, has been provided for rural communities in particular?
Well, I'm going to circulate this report to the committee through the clerk when it becomes publicly available, because I would like this committee to actually dig into this issue a little bit more. But what we're starting to see is there is some movement. We're starting to get some resourcing to the front line, which is what we're aiming at. There's been 164 million, for example, put into the after hours and emergency care in rural communities. There's a number of initiatives that I could go through that we have rural hubs now being, I just better get the terminology right. So the after hours urgent care. So there's 6 rural prototype locations that have been are up and running now. We're looking to roll them out to 70. So acknowledging that that's a system that's under real pressure, but that is an example, good example of work actually progressing. Rural training hubs. So we've had 4 rural training hubs. The first one in Harua has been established, and we're looking at 1 in each of the 4 regions. And you will also be well aware of the Waikato Medical School in the rural. Very aware. Yeah. So
great news.
Yeah. So that, and I'd like to go into that a little bit, because I was a doubting Thomas on this. Obviously, been lobbied hard like you had by the University of Otago.
Well, we're an economically rational party. Yeah.
It's not April Fool's Day, Scott. So I was a doubting Thomas until I actually met with him actually at Te Kuiti, and once I was fully aware of why the current system isn't working. So we've got the rural immersion courses within Otago and Auckland. But what we're seeing is, say, an intake of 200, there might be a dozen students that decide to go into the rural immersion course, which we're seeing maybe 3 or 4 actually go into rural practice. So we've got this massive funnel that ends up with virtually no students actually going into rural. And the Waikato Medical School will be specifically targeting, it'll be full rural immersion. So the students that go in there will come out and go into rural. So that's, I think, a massive step in the right direction. It is going to take a while to work its way through, but now that I fully understand the concept and why the current system isn't delivering, I think this has the potential to be a bit of a game changer for our rural workforces. Thank you.
Well, it's interesting talking about the rural GP program, because I actually had a friend who that's what he decided to specialise in. Not sure he actually did end up becoming a rural GP though, but that was what he wanted to do, because it had a mixture of both GP building plus you actually did do some serious stuff. It wasn't just literally seeing a patient for 15 minutes at a time. You actually did do some very serious things in the process.
How do you feel about the new medical school since they brought it up and it's relevant? Because I'm asking because I kind of feel like, and the few Labour candidates have said this at publicly over the past few days so I can actually use it. They think it would be better suited in somewhere like Dunedin or Christchurch instead.
I mean, it depends what the focus of the medical school is meant to be. Like, it's been brought up that the medical school in the Waikato, this is what I've actually heard from people who work in the medical industry. The cost to set it up is quite astronomical for not many. Like, it was more cost effective to add an extra 100 placements to Otago and to Auckland. Would have been more cost effective to actually bring the number to up the number of doctors in the country. Also, that number, I think it's 500, was something from the 90s. So we've not actually moved up our numbers while our population has grown. It depends on what the rural school, like if you go to Waikato, you must do rural. That probably is a good thing, because like this is something Laura's also brought up, is the fact in Ekatuna, they can't attract a doctor. So they've got a nurse practitioner who's pretty much running the joint. Now, I can tell you right now, you won't have that nurse practitioner sitting there pulling out things in emergency surgery for farm rescues. That just won't happen because they're not trained for that. Nurse practitioners are good at, like, doing prescriptions, ordering tests, that sort of things there, but they aren't able to sit there and do those emergency surgery things or very minor surgery things that can be done there. I mean, I'm trying to think, I think it was the TVNZ show Fresh Eggs. That was a very eye-opener to the rural GP. Doctor character in there actually mentioned many different things about what he had to do in his job that was out of whack to the city. And it's actually true of what actually is with a rural GP, is the fact that if you have an ambulance sort of situation come up and something needs to be removed on site, it's the rural GP doctor who will end up doing the work, not, a nurse practitioner could not step into that role in its place. And so that's something we do need to actually look at, is trying to rebuild up those rural GPs.
And just finally, so because Labour did this last week, do you think the new policy about setting up, giving them money to set up practices will be more helpful or worse?
I think it'll be more helpful because it will sit down there and stop these big mega corporations buying out GP practices across the country. It's one of the biggest issues we have in the country at the moment, is these mega corporations are going in buying up mum and dad GP clinics, that possibly, 2 doctors or 3 doctors. I know Seatoon was one. I don't think I think it got sold to another one of a similar firm, but it was a husband and wife doctor team who ran it for years, and I think they might have had a 3rd or 4th doctor at different points in there. But they were literally that type of firm where, you had that sort of thing where, it built rapport, whereas when you got these companies that are just literally buying up GP clinics around the country and putting in their own putting in salary doctors in place, you don't get, it tends to be a little bit more of a short-term focus than a long-term focus. So, and like the other thing is GP-owned clinics tend to result in longer-term viability. So they tend to, if they go into a clinic, they're in there for, 5 to 10 years. I know Sue, it's Joanne's ex, when she bought into the clinic in Thames, she ended up being there for 15 years.
But I only see it working in rural areas, not city areas, because
but city areas also need it. I mean, I'm glad Wellington, we probably haven't quite had the rural GP takeover, but I mean, we also did have the interest. I'm no longer with Newtown Medical Centre, but my former GP, Alistair, he had 5,000 patients on his books because he was one of the shareholding doctors of the practice. So when a GP left and they hadn't had a replacement, a lot of these patients were transferred to him or one of these shareholding partners until a new GP came on board. So officially on the books, Alistair had 5,000 patients for him to sit there and deal with, which is way out of the normal load for a GP to deal with. But at the same time, he probably didn't sit there and see many of these patients himself. It would have been other doctors within the practice. But being a shareholding owner, he had to pick up the slack. And also, here was the other thing I always found out was whenever you had Christmas, New Year, he was always the doctor who used to stay behind, not go on holiday.
Yeah.
He was always that doctor.
Did you
He had to be pushed into it one year. He got forced into taking leave.
Did you do that when you moved to that address you're at now, or is this years ago when you moved doctor?
When I was with Newtown Medical, I was with there from when I moved into Newtown till when Alistair retired.
Ah.
Yeah. No, like when I lived in Kandala for 3.5 years, I stuck with Newtown Medical.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had a good doctor.
And
I don't chop and change doctors that frequently. Like you, if you look at my health record on doctors, I've been consistent with doctors for, like I don't chop and change doctors. I tend to, find a good one, I stick with them. I mean, put it this way, I was with the GP that I had as a kid right up until I was into my mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of these segments coming up is on disability employment.
Oh, good.
Just so
I know you'll like this. You'll like that so much.
So are you saying that students who go through the Waikato Medical School will be bonded to rural communities? Is that what is the intention?
Well, there's already bonding available on a voluntary basis, so you can apply. There's a formula there, so students that do go into rural and stay 3, 4 or 5 years, there is a write-off in the student loans. But what we're finding is that that's not being taken up at a very high level. Students want to retain some flexibility. So whether more bonding is the answer, I don't know. But evidence to date is pretty thin on that.
So that's a no. You're not bonding. You're not requiring students to be.
Well, it's bearing in mind it's not me that is making these decisions, but I don't think that's the intention.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I think we'll move on.
I've got a few supplementary.
Can I also just highlight, because it is important, and we did have direct input into the rural health package, that wellbeing package that was in the budget, $12 million over 4 years. We've seen recently an announcement, $2.7 million into Farmstrong. I understand the Rural Support Trust is close to signing a delivery agreement as well with the Ministry of Health. So that's new money coming into rural health and wellbeing.
Thank you. Right, we have a start through the chair, please. We have a start from Hamish Campbell.
Excellent. Thank you, Minister. What impact do you think telehealth will have to take the pressure off rural GPs to broaden access to rural communities?
A very good question. It's been utilised more and more and utilised quite well. So yes, I think it does have a very important place. The other thing I'm hearing now, if I'm being honest, is that we've got to be careful we don't make this a default position. So it's getting balanced there where it's supplementing and taking the pressure off the existing workforce, but it's not getting to the point where we can use it as a catch-all where, okay, they've got access to telehealth. The other part of that is rural connectivity. We've got to make sure that the connectivity is adequate to be able to provide the service, and that is something that Minister Ducey and I are actually meeting shortly with Minister Goldsmith to just work through where some of the gaps are and where we can fill them.
And I understand with the medical school that it's a graduate medical school, so that the students do a year on site in Hamilton, and then they'll get placed in certain rural hospitals and medical centres around the country. So that's how it's going to work, as I understand it, the model.
And I think the other important thing to that, Madam Chair, is that these are people that are going in specifically to train for rural, and they're targeting people that are from rural communities in the first place, that actually have a desire to serve in these communities.
100%. Thank you. Right, one very quick start, Scott, and then we're going to move on. Thank you.
So something like a quarter of people aged over 65 live in rural communities. That's 20% of the population. What of the targeted budgeting is going to that cohort? And what's the plans to make sure there's better health outcomes for our elderly living in rural communities?
Well, that's one of the things the report does shine a light on. The big change coming there is that the capitation model is being reviewed, and from the 1st of July next year, like we saw a 6.5% uplift this year in capitation for GPs, but the model is being reviewed, and rurality is going to be a factor, not just age or sex or whatever. So rurality and the the challenges that our seniors in rural areas have in getting access to healthcare will be very much part of that. So I think it's a big step forward.
Thank you. Right, we've now got a new.
That's interesting point about changing the capitation rate, or basically the base rate of having the GPs on there. I'm glad the point that Mark Patterson is making is the fact that we should not be replacing rural GP services with telehealth, which, telehealth is great when you're, wanting antibiotics or something to be prescribed. But if you need a physical examination, telehealth is a joke, because how is the doctor meant to sit down there and get their hands across, down, like put their hand down the computer? Like, imagine if I put my hand down the computer at you and suddenly it sat down there and came in and sat there and what you thought was, came out of the screen of your iPad. I mean, like, that just does not happen. That happens in cartoons. We physically, it's not achievable, and it's probably not going to happen in the foreseeable future.
Like we're very fortunate that at the start of this month, you've probably seen it in Lower Hutt, they opened a big like urgent care facility. So
I think they've expanded the trading hours, because the trading hours used to be only available after 5 o'clock. Now the trading hours are open all day, it matches the one in Wellington. Because quite often, a lot of people in Lower Hutt, if they couldn't get to urgent care, they landed at the Wellington one for urgent care on Adelaide Road. So I actually think that's good, the fact that the urgent care clinic is available for services from 8 a.m. in the morning rather than 5 p.m. at night.
And they moved it, just a quick fun fact, they moved it from their previous building to that building that used to be the birthing unit that they built and never used.
Oh, well, at least they're using some facilities of it.
Because they decided to, after they spent millions building that building, the council decided they didn't want it and they built it. They moved.
Well, the council can't decide what happens in a health unit. I mean, central government is not, what's it called?
Whoever was responsible decided that that's not where they wanted it after all, and they rebuilt it at the hospital instead.
Yeah, but that would be a hospital decision. That wouldn't actually be a council decision. Councils do not interfere in hospital services in this country, thank goodness.
But it was a waste of money because, it was built and then it was standing empty for a few years because they changed their mind.
Yeah. Well, at least they've repurposed it into something rather than just leaving it sitting idle. Yeah. And it's lovely to see a little bit of debate about the Otago School of Medicine. The Otago School of Medicine also has offices at Wellington Hospital.
Yep.
I definitely do know that, because I see it on the old Grace. No, not the Grace Neal block. It's the other. It's the old. It's the block that used to have the theatres in before they shifted to the new building at Wellington Hospital. That's where the Wellington Medical School office is for the next stage of training. And I know my friend John, when he did his training, his internship at the hospital, he did it at New Plymouth Base Hospital, which is quite far away from Otago University.
Without getting too personal, I had a lady friend that trained as a OT there.
Yeah, it is quite a common place to sit there and do it. I mean, put it this way, most hospitals in New Zealand are some form of a training hospital. Yeah. Okay, let's hear more from Mr. Mark Patterson.
Line of questioning from Mike Buttrick.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, 9th of April, yourself and Minister Willis had a wall announcement that effective 1st of July 2025, agencies or ministries should use wool where practical and possible. How's that gone?
Well, I guess the flagship contract is with Koinga, so it's good to see them quickly come on board after a lot of public pressure as well, which was great to see. Actually, the public are right behind this, the wool and government buildings. In terms of the reporting, there's an annual report back, so the various departments have to report back on what their uptake of wool has been, and if they haven't used wool in a particular build, why they haven't. Also note that since that time, there's been a Further bolstering this policy is the fact that the procurement rules have been changed, where benefits in New Zealand has got to be built in more rigorously and taken into account, so not just price. So we expect that to also assist wool.
Thank you.
Chair, I have a question.
Is this your?
Yes, I have a primary question, Madam Chair, yes.
Yeah, well, you're
It's a supplementary on the wall question though, but it is to do with the wall. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
fine.
Minister, if I can, on the back of Mike Butterick's question, obviously that was more a domestic conversation around wool. What about you working with Minister Macleay in terms of market access for offshore wool markets for New Zealand product? In so much as that I know that the Chinese populace is going through all manner of rigorous change and has got some real internal problems. Are we looking for new markets for wool offshore, and are you advocating for that with Minister Macleay?
Absolutely, yes. Well, the Wool Impact initiative that's partly funded through MPI, that's their primary focus is trying to bring global brands, attach global brands to local manufacturers, and that has, because you're right, the wool and government buildings and some of the domestic initiatives are really good, but it's actually those export markets. India, the free trade deal, I don't know if many people are aware, but wool's actually our biggest export commodity into India. They've got a national strategy of tripling their textile exports over the next, by 2030. It's already a massive industry. So the work that Minister Macleay is doing, opening up the free trade deal, will be massive for that. And I also travelled to China as part of a delegation September, I think, and the Nanjing wool market, where 30% of New Zealand's wool is traded. And that was extremely positive in terms of, from our perspective, they were almost desperate as where's the wool, and they were concerned about the price rising. There has been it's stuff like uniforms into the train conduct, as you're aware, it's very centralised over there. So a lot of it goes to uniforms through these massive government departments that they have over there. So there's a pivot to wool there. There's some stuff around the EU regulations that have really advantageous for natural fibres in terms of some of the regulation they're putting on synthetics. So there's lots of good stuff that these trade deals are opening up, and the work that our both Wool Impact and NZT and the like are doing to assist some of our local manufacturers gain access to these markets. So very positive.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Look, I'm conscious we've got 15 minutes more of the Minister's time. I've got primaries from Joe, Mark and Scott, so we'll fire away. Joe.
Thank you. And I just do want to acknowledge all the work that you've done in the wool space, Minister. Coming back to your advocacy though, one of the first questions or first times you were before our select committee, I think I asked you about your advocacy, about the concerns that the disabilities community raised about access to services in rural communities. And at that time, that was something that hadn't been on your radar. And I'm just interested to know what engagement, if any, you've had in that space since then and in your role as Minister.
Jane, have we got, I'm actually not, I'll be totally honest with you, I'm not aware of any specific representations we've had from the disability community. One of the issues with this portfolio is it's so wide ranging, like everything, and it's like, what do you focus on? And so some of these things we just literally don't have the capacity to take up unless they, they're lobbying hard for it.
It would probably be good. I think the community would probably really appreciate.
Alternatively, if the ministers are doing something or a proposal in that space, then that's when we tend to engage. But I would also say we just recently had somebody join our team from the Ministry for Disabilities, so getting a little bit of a viewpoint in there for the team.
And I understand Minister Upston and Ducey are both working really proactively in that space, and that's across all communities.
And we engage in.
One sub, and
that's it. And so my supplementary is around advocacy and your role in advocacy, and with the recent changes that we've seen to pay equity, and that affects a lot of rural women who work with those in the disabled community, the senior citizens, and all those sorts of teachers, etc. What advocacy did you play when that decision was being discussed? Did you argue for those in the rural community, the women that are largely impacted by that decision?
That was a cabinet decision, which we didn't have any specific
input.
No
conversations.
No, that wasn't something that we've specifically advocated for. But I would say that since, I'd hate to give the impression we've done nothing, because since June, since we were last year, I think we've, 53 cabinet papers that we have contributed to with the rural lens. So, it is a very broad space with, a small team. So we do have to focus our efforts.
And I do want to acknowledge the team in the Office for Rural Communities. They do a great job. Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
Well, that's interesting, mentioning the fact that what would help the Minister of Rural Communities advocate disability is basically having a bit of a pet project there. So, Blake, please explain to the audience why you've not done good enough job lobbying Mark Patterson.
Well, I'm going to bring that up actually. He's telling not the whole truth, because when the informer met with him for one of our interviews, and I don't care if they don't like me saying this, he off camera, he assured me that he was working with us. So
yeah,
not good. So that gives me, so that gives me a bit of work for tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sure he'll get to it. I mean, it's not an easy task, and it's like, well, what do you actually do when you're in the when you're trying to advocate for something? It's like, well, what do you end up trying to do? Because it's always a rock and a hard place, because it's not just something simple. It's like, well, what do you advocate for? Because what you might advocate for one group of people, someone else sits there and has a go at you for getting it wrong. I mean, I remember that where I looked at this is when Tony is part of the reason why. But when I served for Greater Wellington Regional Council, I wanted to look at making more bus services on certain routes have double-decker buses, because those double-decker buses guaranteed someone in a wheelchair ability to get on the bus versus not being able to get on the bus at all on the first bus that goes past. Because Tony's biggest issue was the fact that he would get on at David Jones on Lambton Quay, which would be the third bus stop in on route, and at some points during peak, the first bus that came past could not take him because there was no room at the third bus stop on the bus route. Whereas a double-decker bus, you're more likely, they have a lot more passenger capacity. The able-bodied people go upstairs. The not-so-able-bodied people stay down the bottom, and you tend to have that room that you can fit at least one, if not two, wheelchairs into the bus.
Is that why he moved back to Hamilton, because he couldn't get
No. He moved to Hamilton to be closer to his birth mother and birth sister. He never came from Hamilton. He came from Gisborne.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He moved to Hamilton for a new life after he finished working for I can't remember what the name of the company was in Wellington. The job that he was doing in Wellington, they kept putting him on admin work. They wouldn't let him go out to do on-site inspections and all that, because they used to complain about how long it took to get there and back. But he used to get himself there and back, and he used to get himself there and back on the bus service, and it didn't cost the company anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they weren't exactly easy and accommodating with his disability.
Do you find the comment around the pay equity a bit of a cop out too? Like, not.
I think Mark Patterson swallowing a dead rat.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he morally wants to sit there and say he supported that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Mark Patterson has a moral compass. That's the thing. He has a moral compass.
I get the feeling with how advocacy-wise he was around the wage fifth bill. He's not too happy about the pay equity stuff.
Yeah. It is definitely, it's not something that is easy to work around. Yeah.
I don't know if you get that impression, but I do.
Yeah, I have the impression he is not a political orphan. He is an MP from the 2017 to 2020 version of New Zealand First, stuck in the 2023 to 2026 New Zealand First.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Because he does, he is definitely part of that Tracy Martin, Ron Mark wing of the party.
Right.
he is part of that wing, and he is still behaving like he's part of that wing now. That's
Right.
something you notice about Mark Patterson.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like he's flipped like Shane Jones has.
Like less liberal, like we were talking about the other night. Less liberal, like Bishop. But
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, he's definitely, I mean, Mark Patterson used to be a National Party member years back. He's one of those people from National who shifted to New Zealand First.
Yeah.
I mean, Andy Foster's another one who's in the same boat, but I wouldn't class Andy Foster in the same league as Mark Patterson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's see more from the Minister. Probably our final one for the night.
Finally, Minister, and I really like my last question, I think. I'm thinking of the labour force as in the rural labour force, and some of the questions that Joe and I have had in the past about vocational training to you and how education has bled into the labour force. How are you working with the education sector where you can to advocate for young learners, people that have gone through some sort of education system to go into the labour force, and what retention looks like? Because there seems to be a breakdown often when young people are leaving high school in rural communities, and if they are staying in those communities, often they don't necessitate full-time employment a lot of the time. It's been an issue before. Is it an issue now, and are you canvassing that with Jane and your team?
Thanks for that question, Mark. I think it's a really important one. Yes, we are. As you'll be aware, there's quite significant reforms to the vocational education that Minister Simmons is putting through. And whilst Minister Hoggard has the rural skills portfolio, we do recognise this is a pretty significant issue. So we have dabbled, will be quite involved in this. Actually, one of the things that we have advocated for successfully within those reforms, there was $20 million kept aside for specific rural initiatives, and I was very pleased to see Telford down in South Otago be the recipient of some of that extra funding, very important for our rural sector. But more broadly, there's a group called Ag People and Pathways that we've been engaging with, and I understand Mike Buttrick and Joe Luxon have also been engaged with them. To be fair, they're a little bit concerned about the big swings in policy between governments, and they're wanting to have a broader oversight. And we're talking about groups like the Ag ITOs, Growing Future Farmers, the like. So very, very credible groups. So Minister Hoggard and I are working with them to understand some of their concerns a bit more, because they want to have a more holistic picture, right from what we're teaching in schools through to retention, as you rightly point out, is really critical, and what we need to do to just improve that. So it's a big piece of work, but we're really engaged in it because we think it's important, and it is important. Yeah, I guess watch this space a little bit. I can assure you we are engaged in it.
Thank you,
Thank you very much. Right, far away, Scott.
Thank you. So the Jobs for Nature program helps improve our freshwater quality, biosecurity, our biodiversity, and what modelling has been done to look at the impact of cutting that program on our environment.
Well, that was time limited funding, so I guess that was a priority of past government. I guess we've got to put another hat on here, but through the regional development portfolio, I sit on the Labour Market Ministers group, and I have actually asked that question for some modelling to be done. So yeah.
So one of the big benefits, to Mark's point, was the ability to employ young people and train and upskill workers, so that vocational training that happens through the Jobs for Nature. If you're thinking about keeping some part of it or reinstating some part of it, is this where you're thinking of going to make sure that we have that youth employment and that pathway into employment in our rural communities?
Bearing in mind we don't make these decisions, but on an advocacy basis, I'll just go back to our previous discussion. I think one of the things we've found is some of this time limits of budgeting, and there was, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of the program, but when I was up in Potiki last week, or on the Bay of Plenty, we went to a mussel farm, Te Ohiwa, and they were referencing a program with a te reo name that I can't recall, and they were saying, look, it was actually going pretty well, and then the funding got cut, and that's exactly what these Ag People and Pathways people are talking about, is what, so what's working, what's not, doesn't feel particularly coordinated at the moment, and they want to have, and they feel we need greater oversight over it, and I've asked Jane and her team to do a piece of work on exactly those issues.
One final sup. Minister, I've visited the Wakatipu Basin, Twizel, and looked at the wilding pine problem recently through the Molesworth. Wilding pines are infesting our hill and high country. They were being managed under the Jobs for Nature program. What investment is going into ensuring that we keep wilding pines, we keep our hill and high country? What investment is going into ensuring that we manage the wilding pine crisis that we're facing?
Well, there has been extra investment above the baseline, which is something like $2 million, but I'll be honest with you, Scott, not enough. I genuinely believe not enough. This is a problem that we have to get our arms around, and that's certainly my advocacy. But it's not just funding, it's also, you know, how do we use grazing, potentially fire as well, which some trial work's been done on at the moment. So it's kind of an all of the above thing, but I do think that's something that we need to more focus on. It's certainly something that is part of my advocacy towards budget 26.
Wish you all the best with that. Chairman, I do want to make it clear, because it came up yesterday in the committee as well, that the Jobs for Nature funding, it was a time limited budget, so it was not cut by this government.
Well, it's no, that's a debating point. So,
Yeah, they could have continued it.
I'll actually address that. I think, with all due respect, Madam Chair, that is semantics. It's the total that's going in, the economy going in, and it's outcomes based, and we are losing that battle at the moment, and we cannot lose that battle.
Mark Patterson having to sit down there and indirectly basically call Sue's Redmayne out. Did you get that impression?
Was he agreeing with her or taking a shot?
Well, he kind of took a shot back in the other direction and go, well, the whole point of that is for results-based outcomes. It does feel a bit like Sue's Redmayne is like literally digging into the previous government. I mean, there are 2 points there. If you put funding and the funding is not renewed by future government, one aspect you can call it's taking funding away. Another aspect you can say, well, they actually haven't renewed the budget. They did not extend the budget.
You know, I've actually, going back to what you were saying before about him being stuck in a different era of the party.
Yeah.
If New Zealand first get booted out at the election, I wouldn't be surprised if he joined Labour or the Greens.
I don't know. I don't think so. Because I would have said Tracy Martin would have done that. Like Tracy Martin would do that before Mark Patterson. And Tracy Martin has just become political, what's it called? Not part of any political party.
Her contract with the retirement, not commission, but the other.
The advocacy role she's in, yes.
Isn't up until like 2027, so she's not eligible for this election anyway.
Well, she probably should not be standing as a conflict of interest. No, but I mean, you have those steps in place to sit there and make it work. I mean, you don't want to sit there and have like I've heard with schools is quite problematic with it is the fact that if you're a school teacher and you run for office for a central government election, you technically have to resign from the position.
Yeah, but like I say, I wouldn't be surprised if Patterson goes to a more left-leaning party.
I can see him, on the other hand, advising left-leaning parties or people. Like, I mean, James Shaw's no longer in Parliament, but he would be the sort of person who would be, with James Shaw, he would be the sort of person who would actually, be in James Shaw's office advising and making a better solution out of it.
So you
picture Mark Patterson possibly not joining a political party, but he would be willing to advise people on the left.
So you don't see him doing it. Well, he didn't end up doing it because he passed away. But you don't see him doing a Chester Burrows and joining a left-leaning party.
Did Chester Burrows join Labour?
Yes, he did briefly before he died.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Put it this way. if he hadn't have got aggressive cancer, he would have run in 2023.
Oh, yep. I mean, yes, that's true of Chester. What, he would have run for the seat of Wanganui under Labour.
And his,
Actually, he probably would have been able to do it in that particular election because Steph Lewis would have probably been renominated because she was the sitting incumbent.
yes, but he was in that area before he died.
Yeah.
His daughter basically backed that up on her TikTok.
Yeah.
That in one of her viral videos, that if he hadn't have died, the intention was to join Labour, and he would have been, I think, the first person, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in the modern era to move from National to Labour.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if there's been any examples of that actually happening in New Zealand history where people have shifted from National to Labour or vice versa. I don't think that's ever actually happened in New Zealand history at all.
So
they've shifted to minor parties or minor parties to major parties, but we've not had a person who started off a national, stood for office a national, was a national MP, left or defected and then went to the Labour Party or the other way around. I don't think that's ever happened at all.
But don't forget, as I've said to you a couple of times, McAnally was briefly with National.
Yeah.
At point.
And I can see that considering where he's based. Because National Party has always been known to hold the Wairarapa.
Right.
It's been a bit interesting since he's hit the scene. But prior to him hitting the scene, they've always had a stronghold on the Wairarapa. The only time they kind of came close to losing it was under Georgina Bayer. It's because Georgina Bayer actually had the support in the Wairarapa was for Georgina, it wasn't for Labour.
And as we know, the reason why he moved to Labour is because he knew he didn't have a chance of winning, like getting the nomination in National.
Yeah. Well, they had, was it someone Hayes in there, and then they had someone else after that, and then they put Mike Butterick up, who, to be honest, I'm not sure how he's been performing as local MP. I don't think it is as great as he's tried to make himself out to be.
So the National Labour thing isn't uncommon.
Yeah.
They do switch from time to time.
Yeah. And in the UK, they had that with John Burko, who started off in the Conservative Party, became the Speaker of the House of Representatives, left the Speaker of the House of Representatives, didn't get his appointment to the House of Lords that traditionally happens with speakers because of Boris Johnson, and then later joined the Labour Party. Yeah. That has also happened. But John Burko also has, I think where his more socialist and progressive values came from was having an autistic child.
Yeah,
and that change it. If you have a child with disability, that shifts political views.
And in case anyone complained, as I clarified, it was very brief. It wasn't very long.
Yeah, and it probably means join the party, and then was literally gone. Yeah. Okay, so for the submissions that are coming up for over the next period, the life jackets for children and young persons bill closes on Thursday, the 11th of December. And also it is the Land Transport Amendment Bill, which is to do with the abolishment of petrol tax and replacing it with road users. And I'm just wondering if the legal... Yeah. So those are the bills on there. There's a lot more that also closes on the 8th of January. We'll have them up for next week's show. Thank you for sitting there joining us with an extended week of Scrutiny Week coverage. We'll be back next Sunday, back to our normal scheduling times at 8 p.m. And I should be a little bit more rested because I wouldn't have done a Ford Fair or a car show event next Saturday. I haven't got anything booked. But if you want to book my coffee cart and trying to bring in some money, beware, I'm money hungry. Mr. Krabs, money. I definitely would sit there. If you got any opportunities, always feel free to.
Are you not going to join Mr. Rennie at the market?
Sorry, what?
Are you not going to go join Craig Rennie at the market?
Craig Rennie, I will be there on Saturday like normal. I would not be abandoning Newtown Market because Craig Rennie's turning up. Is that what you're implying?
No. No, I just figured you might have forgotten because you said you weren't booked.
For Sunday. Saturday's been a long time book. Like pretty much, Newtown Market, I don't abandon it. That's something I need people to understand clear. If you get a hunch that I might not be there, it's likely I'll still be there. It's like, I will not give up a Newtown Market income source unless I've got something very significant to replace it with.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if I'm away for 1 week, I still have to pay my site fee to be there. I can also tell you one that really annoyed me, what happened in Master with it's in the ballot, was the fact that candidates decided on the morning to not tell us they weren't coming, and it cost me a fair bit of money, personally.
Oh, yeah.
And because I made a decision not to go, to not put someone to run the coffee cart because I couldn't train someone up in time or have it all set up already, to then sit down there and ended up, because I need to be a master at like 8 o'clock in the morning, to then actually would have been fine to be there.
Yeah, I wouldn't do Masterton again in a hurry.
That's right, it's 3 years away.
Yeah.
So there's things to be learned, but Wairarapa will be something that will be interesting to work on for the next election.
On that note, everyone, have a good one and we'll see you next.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for watching the Order Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/it'sintheballot. The Order Paper podcast is